On May 25th, we all witnessed on tape as George Floyd was killed by a knee on his neck at the hands of the Minneapolis Police Department. And I should say, at the hands of an officer in the Minneapolis Police Department. And the exciting thing that took place afterwards was it looked like there would be this upswell of a movement that would address issues that were decades and maybe even centuries old. It looked like a movement was going to come out in which we could have actual honest conversations and see honest change on things that needed to happen. You know, I could talk to my white friends about what we in the black community call the talk that we have with our children about interaction with police. We could have some conversations about what needs to change in how policing takes place. We could have some talks about how justice needs to be more fairly distributed. We could have all of those conversations. I was excited. And then the movement got hijacked. So let's address a few issues right off the bat. Okay, so I'm a black man. I am a pastor, and of course, I'm a husband. I'm a dad. All of these are things that are going to color the way that I view the world. The one thing that needs to be understood is that black people, like all other people, Hispanics, whites, Asian, we are not a monolith. We don't all think and act the same way. And so listening to some of the people within this movement as it has progressed now, you would think that all of us are the same. We have the same problems in life. We all are dealing with some of the same issues, and we all want the same things. That we all want justice. We all want what is right, yes. But beyond that, we're not the same. And the movement as it is constituted now, this movement which they say is for justice, this movement which they say was spurred on by George Floyd, it makes assumptions. And when I look at some of the people leading the movement, I have questions. And so what I want to tell you, what I want to say is that's the things that this movement that started with the death of George Floyd and started out in such a positive way. What it has progressed to is not helping me as a black man. It's not helping my children. It's not helping my family. And it is not helping the black community, period. The looting and the burning that took place in cities across America had nothing to do with George Floyd. It had to do with selfishness. It had to do with opportunism. And you say, well, no, this is just a diversity of tactics. This is just anger swelling up. Crap! That's what that is, a bunch of crap. No, it didn't have anything to do with justice. It didn't have anything to do with wanting what was right. It had to do with you wanting a new color television. I'm watching the news and I hear the person that voices Cleveland on Family Guy. is stopping because Cleveland is a black character and that person isn't. I don't care. You saying I'm not going to do that job anymore doesn't, once again, do anything for me. It doesn't do anything for my family. It doesn't do anything for the community. It might make that person feel good. I'm sitting here looking at TV and statues of Columbus are coming down. Statues of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ulysses S. Grant. What does any of that have to do with justice? What does any of that have to do with changing the paradigm that we are in? What does any of that have to do with making this world a better place for everybody, regardless of color, regardless of creed, regardless of religion? Absolutely nothing. That does not help me. That does not help my community. That does not help my children or my family, that you decide you want to tear down a statue of Columbus. But this is what this movement supposedly for justice, this movement supposedly for reform has become. We wanted police reform. We wanted justice. We wanted change. It turns into, well, let's just abolish the police altogether and replace it with what? Sitting here listening to people talk about, well, let's tear down Mount Rushmore. How is tearing down Mount Rushmore, again, supposed to help my community? How is tearing down Mount Rushmore supposed to help blacks in Detroit, in Chicago, in these major metropolitan areas? How is that supposed to help with police reform? What does that have to do with anything that happened to George Floyd on the 25th of May? People talking about free college. Well, that's great. That's great. What about those that don't go to college? Again, how is that helping the person that is in the same position that George Floyd was in? How does that stop that from happening again? That's what we wanted. We want to get to the point where things like that are stopped. But you're talking about free college. What does any of that have to do with what we were trying to achieve? Nothing. The movement was hijacked. That's what it has to do with. It has to do with the fact that the movement was hijacked by people who have totally different motives, totally different requests, totally different things that they want. Beyond, far beyond what we were trying to achieve with the movement that started after George Floyd. I'm hearing people talk about segregation again. Let's segregate people based on their race. Well, what does that have to do? How's that going to help two of my children who are biracial? How is that going to help anything when we have people like my grandparents who went through an entire civil rights movement in the 50s and in the 60s to get rid of segregation, to have people now in the name of George Floyd say, well, let's bring it back. We want our safe spaces. It's not about safe spaces, it's about soft spaces. I think in some cases people just need to grow up. Finally, how was this movement hijacked? It was hijacked politically. I'm hearing so many political messages about what senator and what presidential candidate, what congressman, what city councilman should be voted for. Let me tell you. Let me get real with you for a minute about how all of this worked. Because you see, I grew up in an area where, first of all, when it came to elections, we weren't going to see Republican candidates. They didn't think that it was worth the time. They figured that we weren't going to vote for them anyway, so they didn't bother. That was a problem. But also was a problem is the Democrat candidates, I didn't see them either until election time came around. And then all of a sudden, at Sunday morning services, here's this person who comes and acts like they're worshiping with us, changes the way that they talk so that they can appear to be more relatable, and tells us what they're going to do so that we will elect them. And 4 years later, they come back and do it again. But nothing's changed. Don't fall for it. That's not what the movement about. What the movement is about is, regardless of who the person is in office, or regardless of who the person is that is being voted for, what are they going to do for justice? What are they going to do to make sure that this world becomes a more safe place, and more place where we have equal opportunity, a place where a person can go out, and even if they do something wrong, they don't have to worry about their life being ended by someone putting their knee on their neck for 8 minutes. But no, we don't want to talk about that anymore. No, that's old stuff. We want to talk about separating based on race. We want to talk about statues. We want to talk about looting. We want to talk about all that. We want to talk about changing the names of military bases. Now, don't get me wrong. I will tell you that it always seems strange to me that in the United States military, specifically the Army, the United States Army, that won the Civil War, it decided to name many of its bases after generals who fought on the other side. Yes, I get that. That's kind of strange to me. But what does it have to do with justice? What does it have to do with police reform? What does it have to do with safety? What does any of that have to do with that? Well, no, it's just that the movement has been hijacked. And there was so much opportunity for hope. So much opportunity for change. And I could lie and say that I'm still hopeful. I'm not. Because nobody's talking about that anymore. That's not the popular theme anymore. Who's voicing cartoon characters is important. Taking down statues is important. Names for military bases, that's what's important. Free college. Abolishing the police. Maybe we can get back to it. Maybe we can get back to it and nobody else has to die. Because the fact of the matter is, none of this is helping. You know what it's doing? It's sowing fear and resentment. Good people out there who would be on the side of justice, they're afraid now. I'm watching videos on YouTube of black men running up to white women and during protest and telling them to get down on their knees and apologize. Is that helping? It's not helping me. But it is, again, it's sowing fear. It's sowing resentment. I look forward to the day when my 4 little children will be recognized not for the color of their skin, but for the content of their character. Martin Luther King, I have a dream speech. What happened to the dream? Where'd it go? I don't know. I don't know. I just hope that one day we're able to get back to being sensible. God willing.